Hi, this is Jenny with SPARKLETTES ART. Today we're going to create a zombie hand breaking out of the earth. To do this project, you're going to need some clay, some different tools. I like to use tweezers to make some texture. I have a broken piece of an eyeglass that I use to help smooth. I have a needle tool. You can also use something else that you have that's like this at home. And I like to have a sponge with some water on it so I can just wet my fingers now and again, keeping the clay moist. You're also going to need something to put your sculpture on. I recommend a box with some that from the recycle bin with a little piece of plastic on it or parchment paper. You can pick what you'd like. I chose something delicious. All right, go gather your supplies and meet me right back here. See you soon. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is condition this clay. This is a Crayola air dry clay, and I condition the clay for me, because my hands aren't so strong, I'm going to break it apart into different pieces, like different balls like this, and squeeze it and warm it up in my hands. And then I'll stick it all together once these little pieces are warmed up. Okay, or you can get a kid if you have a kid nearby, and you can have them help you warm the clay. Okay, thank you, kid. The kid is Maggie. She's my daughter, and she likes to help. Okay, you get to decide the size, what type of thing is popping out of the ground, all of those things. So I'm going to make one that's a little smaller than the last one I made. The clay is a little dry, so I'm gonna just add a little bit of water and to moisten it, and then mix it up again and flatten it. So this will be the base for my piece. Now, I haven't actually seen any zombie hands popping out of the earth, so I'm just gonna have to use my imagination on this one. The reason I put plastic wrap or parchment paper underneath is so that it will help keep the clay from drying out. So it will help you to have a photo reference to look at, or you can even look at your own hand and pretend that it's popping out of clay, or sorry, of the earth. To make my fingers, I'm going to roll small conical shapes. So this will be this finger. Now, when we take two pieces of clay, we score slip and smooth the pieces together. So we're going to add slip to join the two pieces together. I've scored this, added the slip, put the two pieces together, and then smooth. Making another finger. I'm gonna score. Add the slip. and then smooth. If you are making zombie fingers, you can have them rotting and have bugs on them. You can go crazy with all the fun details. Okay, doing my next finger. This would be the index finger. Looks like I need a little bit more for a base over here, so I'm gonna just add some slip, squish it on there, and then add my finger. This is the pinky finger, so it's a lot smaller than the other fingers. And so I'm gonna have it like this coming out. So this one's gonna stick out a little bit. And then the thumb. The thumb isn't gonna be as far, it's gonna be like this high, because if you look at your hand, the thumb is going to be shorter. So you actually could see it from this. The thumb's like down here near the first part of the finger. And the thumb also is, these are all pointing in, and the thumb points the other way at a slight angle. I'm going to shape the piece with my fingers. You can use tools to shape as well. Making sure everything's attached to the base. You spin the piece around when you work in 3D so you can see different angles. So you can see what you've got going on in the back side. I probably will need some more clay back on that end. I'm not too worried about score, slip, and smooth for this big piece because I'm really connecting it with the other piece. Okay. So these don't have to be like perfectly rendered. We can make these a little bit wonky because these are the hands of a zombie. So that gives us a lot of freedom. I'm gonna add in the nail bed. So to make the nail bed, I just press down with my own finger. And I want to add some sort of creepy longer nails. So I'm gonna get some clay. Just making a teardrop shape for the nail. Super creepy. I'm doing the index finger. Now these fingernails don't need to be super neat and tidy because this is a zombie and it is breaking out of the earth. So probably gonna have a couple broken nails. Probably doesn't have a lot of time to file their nails. So I scored, slip, and then adding the piece. It is helpful to have the fingers where they connect here to be a bit wider, so more of a triangular base, and that's a good support for them. This is my thumb, so I'm going to add that. Shaping the teardrop shape, flattening with my fingers, scoring. Okay. Now I'm going to add the texture to the ground. I'm going to use tweezers. I'm just going to twist and pull the clay up in different ways. There's really no right or wrong way to do this either. So if you have a different tool you like, you can try like the other side of this, see if you like that better. But you can experiment with different tools or just found objects and see what types of textures you can make. Where the fingers are coming up out of the earth, I'm going to add more clay, like the earth is piled because of the hole the hand is making coming up. So I'm going to make my little hole, make my pile of clay, twisting that right on there. This is not adhered properly. I'm just sort of grinding it in to the rest of the piece. And it's really okay if some of it breaks off. It's more to get the texture of the grass or dirt or moss, whatever you want to make your hand popping out of. So I think my favorite is twisting it. But again, you probably have your way of making things that you would like more. You want to make sure you get underneath the fingers too, not just around the outside. So sort of mess that up. You're also going to be painting this, so you're going to add in a lot of more detail that way as well. So add the first knuckle, second. Go back in with your tools and dig out where those nails are a little bit more if you'd like. And then you can always smooth. I have a little sponge that's wet, and I dip my fingers and just smooth out areas. So you keep doing this until you get it the way you want to get it. So I would go back in, and depending on your level of detail, like you want to add in the lines that are above each of the knuckles. You might have some flesh exposed, especially if it's a zombie. You could also do a paw, like a cat paw or a raccoon, or you really could make anything breaking out of the earth like this. Okay. Shaping those nails again. A lot of hand building is going back and forth and trying different techniques. Okay, so this is good for now. So I'm just gonna do some finishing touches and then I'll let it dry. After this dries completely, then I'm going to paint it using a craft paint or acrylic paint. So I'm mixing up the soil color. I'm just using right where the plastic is. And I've mixed a couple different colors. I have a tan, an orange, black, and I need more orange. Pretty gross color, so I'm gonna go ahead with that. When I paint the soil, I'm just gonna dab the brush onto the clay. Some of it might come off because the way I twisted it with the tweezers. So my goal here is to just cover the dirt area. And I was kind of going for the look of in between like moss and dirt. a piece breaks off, you can just sort of play with it covered in paint and it will stick back down. We will seal this piece when we're all done with Mod Podge, and that's going to keep it from crumbling. But it's to be expected to crumble if you didn't slip, score, and smooth pieces together. I know my own kids just take pieces and stick them on a background or on a foundation of something they're building without following the steps, and then they get upset when something falls off. So you really do want to follow good technique when you're putting pieces of clay together. This brush is pretty good. You could choose a brush with longer bristles. That might make the job a little bit easier. Just dancing around the work, spreading paint. Because I want the paint to seep in, I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. And so watering down the paint, adding a little water to my paintbrush, and then go back over to get some of the areas that don't have paint, to have the paint seep into those areas. So I'm dipping my paintbrush in the water and then into my paint, and that's doing a really nice job of covering. Now, if you don't want, like I have this very dark greenish brown color for my soil. However, you could use any color you want. This is your piece, your imagination, and you have complete artistic freedom to choose what you'd like. I always have my kids in class practice drawing or painting something, and then the way I'm showing them so they can get used to the technique. And then when they create their own work, they can use whatever they'd like. So it helps them practice the technique and then apply it, instead of just doing your own thing from the beginning, not learning the technique, thinking you already know the technique, and not being happy with the work at the end. So this is a 3D piece. We want to work in 3D. I'm going to turn my piece around and make sure I get all of the piece, not just from one view, but from many different views. To make this super cool, you could have bugs and worms crawling all over, but for my sample, I was keeping it simple and leaving all the super creative parts for you guys to make. All right, so I did a pretty nice coat. I'm happy with that. Now I'm gonna mix up the skin color for the fingers. Okay, for the zombie's hand, I'm going to mix up a color. So it's gonna be white. And I'm gonna mix the white with the color of the dirt. See what I get. I'm just using craft paints for this. You could use, I like the Ceramicoat acrylic paints. They're great on clay. So I'm mixing up this color. I want it to contrast with the dirt enough so the hand is kind of sticking out from the dirt. The texture of the hand will help it stick out because the fingers are smooth. So I'm just doing my base coat first, and then I'll go back in and paint the nails and add in other things like bones or flesh rotting or peeling off. But my first coat is this gray color, or it's grayish green, that I've mixed by using the background color and adding white. Again, as I'm painting this, I'm turning my piece to make sure I get all different angles. Okay, this is starting to look a lot more realistic now that there's color added in. And I'm really glad because I want it to be really creepy. So this will dry pretty quickly, and then you can go ahead and add in more color. So I noticed that I missed some of the spots on the fingers, so I'm going to use a really fine brush and go back in and paint the areas that I need to clean up a little bit. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. There's some areas that the ground was going over the finger where I didn't actually want it to go over the finger. So in those places, I'm painting back over. When you mix a color, like I mixed my ground color and then I mixed the color for the hand, if you use the same color and add white to it, those colors are going to relate to each other in your piece and sort of go together. I want my hand to look like it relates to the earth. And I didn't want it to contrast that much, which is why I used the same color and just tinted it by adding the white. Instead of mixing a whole new color up, I used what I had. Okay, as I spin the piece around, I can see more and more of things that I need to fix. And I want to get the details here. So where the ground comes up, I'm going to use the tip of that tiny brush and paint that area where it comes up over the fingers. So that shouldn't be gray like the fingers. That should be the color of the dirt, moss, whatever you've decided it is. I would recommend making plenty of that first color. It's okay to have a little bit different. So that would be different variations of the same color in your piece, that's fine. But if you want it to be a little more consistent, kind of mix a little bit more, and then you don't have to worry about trying to replicate whatever special formula you created to get that unique color. So this one was made using a bunch of different colors, and I'm not really going to remember the exact amount of each color that I used to create the piece. As you can see, some pieces have broken off, and that's fine. All right, I'm pretty happy with this base coat. I'm going to clean my brushes and I'll be back. Okay, so I have my initial coat. It's a little bit dark for the zombie's hand, so I'm going to mix in a little bit of white to that color and go back over it. Because I do want it to contrast with the ground. Now, if you allow the bottom coat to dry and then you sort of scrape up through the paint to the darker layer, that will also create an interesting effect. Right now I'm painting right over, so my cracks will come through. So I have done some details here. And by painting with a bigger brush quickly over the fingers, I'm going to have the cracks come through, showing the detail. You can take this to any level you want. So this could be super creepy. You can have wounds. You can add in, like before I said, some creatures creeping around. Spiders, worms, other gross things that I'm not thinking about that you may know of that you want to add. So that's up to you. You can see how painting in the lighter color over the darker color has made some of those details that I carved in starting to stick out. And that's what I want here. So by starting with the lighter and starting with the darker color for the base color and painting over with the lighter color, I'm allowing the textures to come through. I am painting a bit messy, so I am getting the ground covered again with a little bit of the other color with the lighter color, but I can go back in at any time. Now I'm going to use some black, mix my black in with that green. And I'm going to go into the nail beds and paint around, making the nails stick out a little bit more. I like to mix the colors with the existing colors so they can all relate to each other. Remember, these nails are gross. This is not like super fancy nails that people like to get done. These are gross nails. So they're gonna have ridges full of dirt, or might have a little bit of blood on there. They're not meant to be perfectly smooth. They're meant to have some texture. And by making it darker, I'm making it appear that it's settling into the bed of the nail a little bit further. There can even be some cracks. Just using that really fine brush, bringing it through and adding some cracks. Underneath the nails is going to be super dirty, so I'm going to make sure on this one here I get that gross, dirty, rotting finger look. Okay, I'm going to spin it around like I said because I want to paint the entire thing. I want to look at all of my piece, not just from one angle, but from many different angles when I add in my details. This is what will make your piece look really special. Going back in, I'm adding a darker line for the cracks. So initially I used sort of a medium gray. Now I'm going in and adding a pretty dark, almost black gray. I'm not using paint straight out of the tube or the container. I'm always mixing my paints. Make sure to get the underside of the fingers as well, not just the outside, but in here too. This is sort of a messy painting job, and it's supposed to be looking gross and messy, and like this rotting hand is coming up out of the earth. You also want to put your piece to the side, painting in where those fingers bend, these darker areas. Okay, and If I went a little too dark, I can always go back over with my white and make it a little lighter. Okay, I'm going to add some blood color to this, making it super gross like rotting flesh. So I'm going to use my red, but I'm mixing the red with my green. And that way the red won't be too bright. Green and red are opposite colors. And if we want to make the red a little darker, you can mix in the green. So here's my color. I'm going to use a smaller brush and pretend that there's different wounds. So there's even them in here. So first kind of going in different places where there's some rotting flesh. Now you could have exposed bones. I'm more into the rotting flesh look for this one. This part is super rotting, so I'm gonna make it really have a lot of red because it has lots of bumps and super gross. You can add texture with the paint as you add rotting parts by loading up your brush and dabbing the finger with the paint. And so the paint will stick up a little bit. And that will help give that texture. Again, I'm turning this around because I want to make sure I'm getting all angles of my piece. When working in 3D, it's important to move your piece around and look at it from different angles, making sure that you're thinking about all the different views someone could see. I'm mixing in more gray, so a little dab of the red and more gray, and I'm making another color that I'm going to put on the outside of my sort of rotting flesh blood look, and that will transition the red to the gray. So instead of just having red parts hanging out, it will look like there's something in between. Now I'm really pleased with this rotting look here. So this is a real good example of using that red color in a dark space and having it look like it's rotting. So that one came out really nice. Now other places, continuing to dab, and I'm gonna need to add in, I'm spreading out that rot color. So it's not just one part of the fingers, but it's more advanced. So this is in a advanced state of decay. I don't want to have it at the same spot on every finger. I'm gonna have more intense sections of the red. Maybe some of the rot has come off and is on the ground. You can decide if you want to do that. But it is important to spin your piece and check it out and see what you have before moving on to another color. Okay, looking at my piece, I'm gonna go in with a lighter color. So I have my white and mixing that with my grayish green, and I'm gonna make my nails stick out a little bit more. Not too much, but I don't want them to look black. You could make them black if you wanted to, but I'm going for a different look here. I went back in, painted them a little bit lighter so they stand out. But I'm going to keep those interesting ridges and sort of little holes that I have. You can even use your finger to dab color onto your work. I think I do need a little bit darker down here. Oh, a lot of blood. Coming out of the earth. I'm adding in the black that's mixed with the red to give the piece a little more depth, to make it look a little bit more like it's coming out of the hole. So you can continue playing around with this. I could do this for hours because I really enjoy painting, but you don't need to get into quite as much detail as I did here. You can if you want, and it's always fun to experiment, trying out some new ideas you might have, being creative. Adding a little dark around the nails, giving it more form. So by painting on either side, I'm defining where the nail is and making it pop out a little more. So right here I had a big white spot. I'm gonna go back over. A lot of what I do is going back and forth, playing with the darker and the lighter until I get it the way I want it. Now, there's no right or wrong way to do this. So you might have a different look you're going for, and that's fine. If you have too much rot, you can always go back over it. All right, I'm happy with this rot level. And adding in a little more light to my nails. I do want more red, so I want this blood really to stick out a little more. So I'm going to mix up red with just a little bit of the other red. So I have more hue, which is more color, red bloody color, and I'm going to add that in certain spots. All of these different values of color make it a lot more realistic looking. Not a lot of the red, just like a dot here and there within the wound to show where it's rotting away and bleeding. My favorite is definitely this thumb, because it's pretty much like destroyed by the rot. Maybe you want to add in some rot color to the nails. Maybe not. All right, I'm going to let this dry and I'll be back. Okay, you can brush Mod Podge on, or you can use a spray. So I have a spray here, and this is going to dry clear, but it goes on looking a little bit gray or not clear. So after I spray, just going to let it sit and dry. You can put on more than one coat. Just depends on how secure you want your piece. Hi there. I hope you had fun making the zombie hand today. Now with projects like this, you can keep going in and adding more details and making sure the sides look perfect, or you can just kind of do what you did and be happy with it. It's all up to you as the artist. So when I look at my piece here, I can see that I could go back in. Now that it's on black paper, it stands out more. I could go back in over the sides and paint that back in. This is already sealed, but it doesn't matter. You can still paint over the Mod Podge. So here's the zombie hand. I hope you had a blast today, and I can't wait to see what you create. Hey, see you again soon.